Bleach Thousand Year Blood War episode 33 was one of the best episodes in all of Bleach, and it showcased what will be one of the greatest fights in the entire Bleach series in Uryu versus Renji. And in this video, I'm going to break down the entire details of the episode, as well as the fight itself, along with what we can learn from that fight moving forward. And so if you enjoy this video, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Before I break down the contents of the episode bit by bit, I just want to give you my thoughts on the fight itself. Renji versus Uryu was stupendous. We're going to do the play-by-play breakdown once we get to that section, but I'm going to give you my thoughts at the beginning here before we get there. I am stunned at how well the Thousand Year Blood War arc has made Renji look. Renji looked fierce, he looked strong, he looked competent. Uryu Ishida's stocks are higher than ever, now going 3-0 in Thousand Year Blood War. He beat Senjumaru in singles combat, he beat Ichigo in singles combat, and he's now beaten Renji in singles combat. I fully understand that against Ichigo and Renji, the two of them were subconsciously, well, in Ichigo's case, he was very obviously holding back, but I don't care. Uryu is now 3-0 against some of the best characters that Bleach has to offer. A Squad Zero member, the top of the war potentials in Bleach, and a Soul Reaper who trained under the tutelage of all the 5 Zero Squad members. I'm not going to rob Uryu of the credit he deserves for turning around his life in this manner. I would very much like to point out that the anime is doing a tremendous job of making you hate Uryu for what he's doing. I understood why he was doing what he did, I sympathized with him, but I couldn't really bring myself to really be bothered with Uryu. But after what he did to Ichigo, I felt a little bit more angry at him, because it was one thing for him to go and want to be with Yuha, it's another thing to shoot Ichigo out of the sky, knowing that Ichigo didn't want to fight you. And then you come into this episode against Renji. As far as I'm concerned, and we'll have to wait for it to be confirmed, because it can be reversed, but Uryu Ishida went ahead and shot Renji through his Hakusui Soul Sleep. That's the wellspring of Soul Reaper power in a Shinigami. The exact same thing he did against Jirobo the Wind Scythe in the Soul Society arc. He pierced him right through his Hakusui Soul Sleep, and we haven't seen that guy since. In this episode, Uryu shot Renji in his Hakusui Soul Sleep. The anime is doing so much to make me actually hate Uryu. I don't care what his reasoning is. I don't care what trauma he's going through. He's actively shooting down his friends. I don't care what his reasoning is at this point. He's doing very bad things. And it makes me wonder how they're going to reconcile this. And for that, I give them all the credits in the world, because that's just great. I want to talk about the animation here for a second before I get into some of the details about the episode. The animation in this episode is amazing. As far as I'm concerned, I enjoyed the animation here. Actually, you know what? I'm just going to come out and say that Uryu versus Renji was better animated than Uryu versus Ichigo. And quite frankly, the choreography in Uryu versus Renji makes it slightly better than Yamamoto versus Yuha to me. Like, the entirety of episode 6 is better than the entirety of this, but the choreography that you'll see in this particular episode, the movesets, the counters, the flow and the pacing of the fight itself, it's just stupendous. I am having, like, I don't even know how to verbalize the greatness that we saw in this episode. Amazing stuff from everybody involved. Dali Chen, the storyboarder and director of this episode, our chief episode director, did great. This was his storyboarding debut. The man has not storyboarded an episode prior to this, and this is what he gave us. Absolutely amazing. I loved it. All of it. So now that I've given you my general thoughts on the episode, specifically the Renji and Uryu part, I'm going to go through each part of the episode, breaking down the things that we learned there. I just wanted to give you guys the opportunity to know what I think at the start, so people don't have to wait too long or whatever. But in any case, let's talk about the episode bit by bit from here on out. The episode starts off with a beautiful camera expressive shot showing you the Varveld, and specifically Yuha's castle. And the shot takes you up to one of the towers, and atop the towers stand the Schutzstaffel. And then you have this call and response with Yuha Valhalla in his throne room. He calls out a name, Lilibaro, and then you see Lilibaro take a stance. Gerard Valkyrie takes a stance. Uryu Ishida, Pranita Parkinjas, Askin Naklavar. And every time they take a stance, you can see their Quincy pendants glow, and they're all standing in front of this sphere. And then after Yuha calls out all their names, he tells them to protect their city, and they all disappear because they get transported to different parts of the Varveld. I loved it. The title card of this episode is the best that we've gotten in Core 3 so far. I feel like I can very, very confidently say that. So great stuff on their part. I loved it. In the next scene, we catch up with what Shunsui Kyotoku and the Gotei 13 are up to. So, Bazz-B and the Quincy's in the Little Toto and Giselle want to do their own thing, and so they activate their shadow technique and they descend into the depths, and they're gone, leaving the Shinigami to do their own thing. Now, because the Shinigami are unable to create Reishu footholds, they have to walk on foot, and so they begin running. Yoruichi feels that their spiritual pressure is headed towards Yuha's castle, and she beckons her group to also start running, which they do. As the Gotei 13 squad is moving, they realize that Captain Kurotsuchi is not present, and so we switch focus and we go to a different part of the episode where Mayuri Kurotsuchi appears in the Soul King's palace, now called the Varveld. Now he enters with Nemu, thinking that he was able to pull a fast one over everyone else. He didn't want to be handcuffed by being tied to the rest of the group, and so he delayed when he actually joined the group, and he altered the coordinates of the gates ever so slightly to appear at a different side of the city so he can be unbothered. Unfortunately for him, Kenpachi went to the bathroom while they were launching, came back, saw that Mayuri was opening the gate, and joined him. So now, Mayuri is with Kenpachi Zuraki, Ikaku Madarame, Yumichika Ayasegawa, and Hanataro Yamada. That's their crew, and Nemu as well. And so right now, we have 3 parties in the Varveld. You've got Ichigo Kurosaki and his group, you've got the Gotei 13, and you got Mayuri and Kenpachi. One of the compliments I want to give the staff for this episode, and I'll give this praise specifically to Dali Chen and Murata, because Murata is on record talking about this. Murata told us that one of the things he wanted to do in relation to Core 3 setting is that he wanted to create an immersive world that felt like an open world game so that everything feels tangible and tactile. And based on this episode, I want to make it clear that he succeeded in doing what he said he would do. There's so many shots in this episode, and I'm giving Dali Chen the credit for some of this as well. There are a lot of shots where they'll show the characters, but they'll always show the characters in proximity to where Yuha's castle is. And the reason why that is important to me is that it always gives you a vantage point. It gives you a reference point for where they are compared to the others. I really enjoyed the way they shot a lot of the frames in here. Also, with so many characters running in the city, the camera work in this episode was also extremely well done. And so first we focus on Ichigo and his crew. They're running, and I might have to do like an animation breakdown of this episode if I have the time. I'm not too sure, but this scene animated perfectly with the way they were running. Orihime's physics looking great. And Grimmjow is running on top of the buildings, and he sees Askin knock Lavar, and he charges in, even though he's not supposed to. This leads us into a very comical, amusing section of the episode, where Grimmjow is chasing Askin through the city. The camera work, like I said, is very well done here. And it's just a reminder of why we love Askin Nakalavar so much. He's so charismatic, he's so funny, he's so real in the way that he interacts with people. Hey, you want to kill Kurosaki too? I want to kill Kurosaki. Let's join forces. Grimmjow says no. And he lures you into a false sense of security, making you think that A, he's not that smart, and B, that he's not that strong. Well, I'm here to give you some grim news. Askin Naklavar is that smart, and he is that strong. And Grimmjow got a front row seat to learn exactly how powerful he is, because Askin shot a gift ball at Grimmjow, who mistakenly, unknowingly, touched it and was immediately immobilized. Happening at the same time are the Quincy's. They used their shadow techniques to seemingly infiltrate the palace, but because Yuha shifted the locations around the city itself, they were just outside it. But for them, that's good enough. And so now the Quincy's are going to go do battle with Yuha Baha and Jurgrim Hashfoth, with specifically Bazz-B having a bone to pick with Jurgrim personally. Okay, so before I talk about what Lilibaro is up to, just to catch you up on what Gerard Valkyrie is doing, essentially, what Kubo is doing with Gerard is basically what Oda does with Zoro and what Kubo does with Kenpachi Zaraki. He's strong, he's a brute, and he's lost. He has no idea where he is. He's actually ran all the way to the edge of the city, and he's not going to have a fight for a little bit, so we can put him to the side. To talk about Lilibaro, so one of the coolest things that they did in relation to Lilibaro here is that he's up there in one of the cities. He's a sniper, he's a gunman, he's a camper. So he's up there in one of these cities in like a really good vantage point, and he's looking down into the Varveld below. And what they do here that I find so genius is that they have him adjust the scope on his rifle because he's trying to see really far. It's such a small detail, but it makes all the difference for somebody like me. So he's here, he adjusts it. You can see the screw on top of his rifle adjust as he does so. And he remarks that because the reishi density in the Varvelt is so high, the lesser skilled Shinigami start to fall behind. Those with more injury start to fall behind, and he is of the belief that you take out those that are weaker before you focus on those that are stronger. And so Lillabar right now is going to rapidly rack up a bunch of bodies in one fell swoop. So let's look at Lillabar's sniper totals. Hisagi Shuhei, Omaida, that girl from Squad 13 who I don't really care about, Isane's little sister, I've forgotten her name, but she's out. Isane herself is out. And the other guy from Squad 13 is also out. I'm sorry, I do not remember their names. They're not that important to me. I don't care. But essentially, Lillabar took out a bunch of fodder. And it's really embarrassing that Hisagi is caught within these fodders, but hey man, whatever. Shunsui beckons everyone to scatter so Lillabar will have a tougher shot, and so they all scatter. Once they scatter, that's when Renji is semi-separated from the rest of the pack, and Uryu Ishida makes his way to him. Uryu fires an arrow at Renji, who parries it, looks over at Uryu, dashes towards Uryu. Again, they can't use their Rishi footholds, so he starts jumping off of buildings, jumps into the sky, calmly calls on his Abimaru, extends it towards Uryu, who takes aim with his arrow, also fires, and what happens is Uryu dodges Renji's sword, and Renji narrowly dodges Uryu's arrow, but it scratches him right across the cheek. It's clear that the two of them are about to have a very important fight. And so what happens is, Renji asks Uryu that, hey, you're not here to direct me to your boss, are you? Uryu responds and says, there is no future ahead of you this way. I'm here to put an end to you, essentially. But there's a part where Renji asks Uryu about his cloak, which I thought was really funny to me personally, because if you didn't know, Uryu lost his cloak against Ichigo, and in the next episode, he was wearing a cloak again, which, if you guys understand anything about Uryu is a big fan of his Quincy attire, specifically the cloak part, and he keeps spares in weird places. He's already had to replace his cloak once after fighting Ichigo, and he's probably going to do that again after fighting Renji. I thought it was a very neat little dig that shows the history that they have as friends. Renji makes sure to ask Uryu if he's encountered Ichigo yet, and Uryu says, yes, I killed him, or so I thought, but Ichigo is more resilient than I thought. I believe this is what really proved to Renji that Uryu had gone too far off the deep end. Because what you have here in Renji is that he, at the very least, outwardly, did not look like he was holding back. He looked like he was going for the kill. Now, Uryu will tell us later on that Renji was subconsciously holding back. But as far as what we could see from Renji at this point in the episode, it was very clear. He was going for the kill. He was ready to kill Uryu if necessary. And so here is the play-by-play of Renji versus Uryu. One of my favorite battles in all of Bleach, period. Renji dashes to Uryu and uses Flash Step to close the distance. Uryu responds by reinforcing his arrow and they parry. They exchange close quarter combat. Renji then goes Bankai, which causes an explosion and uses a technique called Zazeka. He points his fingers forward and reinforces the jaws of his blade, which he then launches at Uryu like a whip. It explodes on impact. He then calls Orochiyo and slings Uryu around. Uryu gets out of it and fires an arrow at Renji, who kicks the arrowhead into the sky and goes right into a backflip onto the side of the building. He detaches the right side of the Bankai and combines it into the bigger arm before hurling a flaming blade at Uryu. Now, Uryu fires an arrow, but Renji's sword blows right through it, and Uryu manages to dodge, but the heat damages him a little bit and damages a bunch of buildings in effect. Uryu then uses Hiren Kyoku to jump into the sky and uses Licht Regen. Renji calls Hihio and uses the big baboon arm to block it. He then smacks the ground, which creates rubble, and the blowback pushes Uryu away. Renji then retracts the sword from the snake head's skull and uses the snake head to grab a boulder, which he then smacks into Uryu. The snake head then bites down on Uryu and slams him into a wall. Renji closes the distance and uses his big arm, Hihio, to punch Uryu through multiple buildings. This sends Uryu flying and he lands on the ground, and Renji jumps into the air and stabs him before using Zagatepo, creating an explosion. Renji believes that he's won the fight, but Uryu blocked it with his blue Tavana. he then goes into his holy form. I'm hesitant to call it a complete holy form, so I'm just going to call it a holy form because Uryu seems to have two stages here. One stage doesn't have the gauntlet on his wrists, his ankles, and his chest, whereas the other just has the wings. Right now, Uryu uses the wings, so I'm just going to call it holy form for now. He spawns a bunch of arrowheads, lines them up horizontally, creates a circle with them, combines those circles into a ball of energy, and then into a big arrow, which he then points at Renji and fires. Renji launches an attack which clashes with Uryu's arrow and diverts the attack, which flies right by him and shoots out into the dark skies. Uryu launches more arrowheads into the sky and they attack Renji, who blocks with Hihio. He then makes a flick with his fingers and sheds the hair on his baboon arm. Uryu walks near them and the hair manifests into mini Hihios, which grab Uryu and restrict his movement. Renji then says that he needs 20 seconds. To my understanding, Renji has only taken the first few steps to mastering his Zanpakuto, but he's still a way off. To get around the blowback of how powerful his Bankai is, Ichibei advised Renji to give himself 20 seconds. He'll be able to pull out the true power of his Bankai in a limited 20 seconds. And so, he powers up, and then manifests the big version of his Bankai. You know, the old one, the old big one, and then uses his big arm to grab it, and then he starts swirling it in the air. As it swirls, it builds up momentum, and he laces it with energy, electricity, and fire. He calls this attack Zagat Teko. He slams this hurling sphere of flames into Uryu and destroys a bulk of the city section that they're in. This was a beautifully animated sequence. I loved it, every single bit of this. Uryu is left flat on his back and responds with the Abarai, which he uses to enter his complete holy form, fully powered. He then uses an attack called Feather Zwinger. The arrows form a 5-pointed attack in the skies and launch all around Renji. Renji is then stabbed through with blue reishi within this coffin-like structure, and it starts swirling him around. Uryu explains that Feather Swinger will drain you of your Ryotsu until you cannot maintain Shikai and Bankai. Renji falls out with his Zanpakuto retracted, and Uryu forms a final arrow to end this fight. Renji remarks that Uryu does not know what So means, and that he as a Quincy has no right to speak about a Bankai. So means two kings, and Renji retains the pride of two kings. He tries to forcefully enter Bankai, but he can only muster up the bone part and uses Hikoto Taiho, while Uryu manifests a bow and a special kind of arrow. Uryu has Renji's Hakusui Soul Sleep in his sight, and he fires. Renji gets pierced through and falls, and Uryu tells him that there were 3 reasons why he lost. Number 1, he held back unconsciously. Number 2, he had no idea of Uryu's abilities. And number 3, he's a Shinigami who Uryu despises. Uryu Ishida versus Renji Abarai. Singles combat, battle to the death. Winner, Uryu Ishida. Bro, what an amazing episode. What a great showing for Bleach 1000 Blood War Core 3. Haters must probably be just pulling out their hair in anger and rage right now, because Bleach 1000 Blood War Core 3 is cooking, and it's cooking greatly. So, I'm going to leave you guys there with that. Let me know what you think about this episode. I give this episode a 10 out of 10. I loved it, every bit of it, and I hope you did too. And so make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next Rebirth video. This is your boy, signing out. Peace.